All right, guys, welcome to Beyond the Muscle. I'm really excited to welcome our next guest, Utti Hietala. Utti is a three times, not bad, not bad.
Yeah, that was
He's
pretty
a
good actually.
That was pretty good. Yeah, we're working on the pronunciation of that name. So Utti is a three times Finnish champion, IFBB Classic champion, and INBA Masters champion. He's been competing since 2006,
Yeah.
and he was also a board member of the IFBB Finland, and he's coached a number of athletes too alongside that. Yeah, so we met last year competing at the WNBF Supernaturals.
Yeah.
So yeah, welcome to the show. How are things going?
Thanks. I've done it's in the hundreds actually how many podcasts I've done in total, but they've all been in Finnish.
Yeah,
And this is actually the first one I've ever done in English, so this is cool. But
amazing.
yeah, yeah, and you kind of because I've been following your podcast, you got it. I love the fact that it's so focused on natural competitive bodybuilding. Like it's really because everybody has a podcast these days, but you're really like sharply focused on the competitive natural. I would even say like hardcore bodybuilding, and you've had like a who's who list on there. So I'm really just honored to be on that list now.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm honored to be the reason you're doing your first English speaking podcast. That's really cool. And
Yeah, sure.
yeah, it's funny actually because I was my last show. When was it? The DFAC Worlds in Germany, and I was thinking,
Mm.
obviously I'm not going to compete this year, 2025, but I want a way of kind of staying connected with natural bodybuilding. And I thought to myself, yeah, I kind of fancy doing a podcast. I think that'd be really fun just to, yeah, chat bodybuilding with other bodybuilders at a high level. And yeah, it's been a ton of fun so far. So yeah, thank you for joining me, and yeah, thanks for the kind words. But
Yeah, yeah. So,
yeah,
what are we going to talk about? I'm not sure. I used to be a board member of IFBB Finland, among other
yeah,
things. I was like involved in the on that side of the federation for several years, and yeah, I competed in IFBB Classic Bodybuilding. There's a
mm,
distinction. It's not classic physique. So they started that category in 2005, I think. Yeah, 2005 they had like the first international competition, and
okay,
it's like you wear. I've never worn anything other than your regular bodybuilding posing trunks. I've never
yeah,
worn like the bigger black stuff that they have on in classic physique, and that's like a little thing that because they actually changed.
did
They
they?
they they had yeah they after classic physique came on. They had classic bodybuilding, which is like it's exactly like bodybuilding, but with the height to weight ratio caps.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have the weight limits. So that actually ended up being because they introduced that in Finland under the IFBB, but
yeah,
they also made that drug tested,
right.
and that was the first time ever that you had an actual a natural bodybuilding category in
Mm.
Finland where and all the natties just went there then because we didn't have anything else before that, and they kind of built that up pretty well, and even up until today like they don't have the IFBB with the drug tested classic bodybuilding. Now they also have classic physique and
Yeah.
obviously the other categories. And in Finland, funny enough, the IFBB is the only and the dominant natty bodybuilding federation, kind of,
Interesting.
and the other de facto natural federations they're not present at all because the
Right.
market is cornered by the IFBB pretty much. So
Interesting.
yeah, and last year I that was like a bucket list thing for me because I had followed natural bodybuilding, like the original federations, like the INBA, PNBA, who started with the Natural Olympia in the 90s,
Yeah.
and then the WNBF and all those. Because I remember back in, I don't know, 98, 99 or whatever, when I had first started going to the gym.
Mm.
Uh, I was trying to look up like online and whatever, like is there natural bodybuilding? Does
Mm.
that exist? And I found like, okay, there was this guy called Kai Green winning like the Pro
Mm.
Universe at the WNBF and whatever, and that was such a long time ago.
Yeah.
And my original plan actually was just to because we didn't have any venue for any avenue for natty guys to compete in bodybuilding because
Yeah.
we just had the untested like hardcore bodybuilding at that time, up until 2005. So my original plan was just to, well, yeah, I'll just train, build muscle and save up some money, because even back then, like back in the 90s, there wasn't a whole lot of the natty federations holding shows in Europe. It
Right.
was mostly in the United States, if I remember correctly. Like
Right.
the UK guys, you had like your British finals and probably other shows too, but it's compared to today, it was pretty quiet in Europe, I think.
Mm.
I wasn't finding a whole lot about European shows, so my plan was just to like okay, all of the shows, at least to my knowledge, were like pretty much in the US. So
Right.
I was like, well, I'll just train for 10 years and then one day, save up some money and go compete in the natty federations in the US. But then in 2004, they announced the classic bodybuilding division in the
Mm.
IFBB with the drug testing. And then everybody started, doing the math on the height to weight
Yeah.
ratio.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can actually compete there, because it's not like a true natural bodybuilding category. It's just a category where the height to weight ratio, the weight limit, it limits
Mm.
all the biggest guys from coming in, and the drug testing, which in Finland has been actually year round. It's
Hmm.
it's been not just the day of the contest, but originally it was 3 months before the show, and then they extended it during the time I was a board member and like an athlete's representative in the
Yeah.
federation. They extended that to cover the entire competitive year, so that if you wanted to compete in, like, I don't know, the October shows, you would have to be registered for drug testing by in January,
Yeah.
basically.
Right. Right.
So
Okay.
so that was like we've had a different mm, like scene for natural bodybuilding, and it's always because I remember all the guys who started competing with me back in the day, and
Mm.
we were like all longtime natural bodybuilders who we were just like we were really wanting a competitive outlet for years, and we
Mm.
didn't have it.
Yeah.
And once the classic bodybuilding with the drug testing was announced, we were like, okay, yes, now we can compete somewhere.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
still, it was like, especially when you went to, because I won the Finnish nationals and the overall there in classic bodybuilding. I won it 3 times total,
Yeah.
and I got to compete internationally representing Finland.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so every time you went outside of Finland, uh, yeah, let's just say it's a different ball game there. It's
Mm.
it's not exactly like even like the weight cap
Yeah.
is you have guys who are dropping 10 kilos the week of the show.
Right.
You'll,
Wow.
like really just depleting and doing 3 days of sauna and something, and they just squeeze themselves under the weight limit barely
Mm.
by a hair.
Yeah.
And then, they make the weight limit. Technically, they compete in classic. And then the next day, they're all fully carved up and they're like 11 kilos over. And
Yeah.
they're
That's crazy.
so there was a big like gap
Yeah.
between because I would say that even up until today, the IFBB classic bodybuilding in Finland and classic physique and all the other, they're pretty much truly natty shows, I
Yeah.
would say.
Hmm.
And I mean, obviously, there's always going to be somebody trying to cheat the system, but I would say that's very rare.
Mm.
And you can see that in the physiques. They're good natural bodybuilding physiques.
Yeah.
But even if you like win Finnish nationals several times, then when you go abroad, you're like giving up a lot of muscle, because then it's no longer usually even like the IFBB, like the European and the World Championships.
Mm.
They're technically drug tested, and yes, they've done some, but it's always just the day of the show.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and even then, there's like a lot of foul play going on there, depending on where the championships are held. And I have a lot of stories about that. I'm not sure, but
Yeah. That's
but yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
I'm definitely a fan of kind of out of season testing as a
Mm.
thing. It kind of makes sense, you know. Yeah, yeah, I'm definitely a fan. It's funny just talking about that made me think of my own journey because obviously natural bodybuilding it's so much bigger now. And I remember when I first heard about it, actually, I was always like kind of fascinated by kind of powerful physiques. Like I grew up watching like Stallone and Arnie, those kind of guys,
Oh yeah,
as I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah,
sure you did too.
yeah,
But I remember hearing about natural bodybuilding. It was in around 2008, 2009 kind of time, so a bit later. And a PT friend of mine at my gym, this guy called Aaron, he was prepping for a show. And I remember at the time seeing his physique change and get leaner and leaner. And I was just very like intrigued by the whole process. And I
yeah.
remember at the time he said his diet was like chicken and broccoli for months and months and months, just complete
Yeah.
craziness. But putting
Yeah,
that
the good old bro diet.
good old bro
Yeah.
diet, yeah, yeah. But putting that like the craziness aside though, of that diet, it definitely kind of piqued my interest. And I think that's one of the reasons I ended up competing, albeit years later. And then I discovered like 3DMJ, Lay Norton,
Yeah.
and then like the BNBF, I heard about them as well. So for me, it was like a combination of factors. But yeah, it was a much smaller and much more niche thing back then, wasn't it? But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I would
interesting.
say it's grown like even though a good comparison is mm, I guess you could call it natural powerlifting, drug tested
Yeah,
powerlifting.
yeah,
They've like grown by leaps and bounds in the same time because the IPF and all that stuff, as far as I can understand, like I've never had a personal interest in powerlifting, even though I probably would have been a better powerlifter than a bodybuilder.
really,
That's
right,
the
right,
yeah, yeah. Before I really hurt myself like dozens of times over, but
right.
yeah, it's because they have grown so much over the last 20 years in terms of popularity and how widespread the sport is. Compared to that, I still think like natural bodybuilding is kind of lagging behind.
Okay.
However, we've still experienced a lot of growth.
Hmm.
And I would argue that today, natural bodybuilding is pretty much the strongest and most widespread it has ever been in its history. And that's a history of around 30, 35 years or something, because
Yeah.
the feds really started like in the early 90s, if I remember correctly.
Interesting. Yeah, it's definitely grown. Yeah, I've been away from it for a while. I competed in the kind of 2015, then I kind of
Mm.
stepped away. But yeah, so I don't know the reasons why. I guess these things grow organically. I attribute a lot of it to 3DMJ, what they did for natural bodybuilding, and then
Yeah,
more
they were.
recently like AJ Morris
Mhm.
in the UK, and then his
Yeah.
reach went pretty global as well. So I'd say they were two of the big reasons why it grew so much. But yeah, I want to talk about your season a bit, Uti, because you competed, was it four times last year in
No, I
2024?
did three. I did three shows,
Three
and
shows.
yeah. I did the British shows near Birmingham, which
Yeah,
was like it was a logistically smart move because we could just me and my buddy we traveled to Birmingham like 2 days before the Supernaturals
yeah.
of the WNBF, and then we had like an Airbnb. I don't know, in some kind of a slum neighborhood there. I don't know.
Right, right, right.
It was cheap, but it was good. There was a really nice gym nearby,
Yeah, oh, cool.
and yeah, and then we just trained, and I prepped for the UK DFBA. I did the UK DFBA the next weekend,
Yep.
and then flew back to Finland, and then I got to stay home like for 2 days before I had to leave for the INBA European Championships in Denmark.
How did
But
you get
those
on with
were
that show? You won that one, didn't you?
I won the Masters 40, yeah, which
Yeah.
was really cool.
Mm.
And but what was even more surprising for me, because I did a crossover in the open tall division
I remember
bodybuilding as
reading
well.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I also did the open tall in the UK DFBA the
Did
week
you?
before.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know
but
that.
I didn't make top five. I didn't
Right.
make top five there, and I hadn't even seen the pictures when because there was like a 1 week delay. So I figured that I'm just not at the level of the open guys, even though I can, do well in masters.
Hmm.
That's what was I. That was what I thought
Yeah.
after like the UK DFBA, and I only got the UK DFBA pictures after the Europeans had happened. So for me, it was a big surprise when I actually made the top five at the Europeans and even placed fourth there. And but afterwards, when I looked at the pictures, I was like, for example, UK the FBA Open tall lineup. It was like I would say the top two guys, the German and the I think it was Austrian, those two guys, they were like the clear top two. But after that, like my analysis is that like anywhere between like places 3 to 8, it was really close, and
Mm.
I was probably in that group, but I just on that day didn't make the top 5,
Yeah.
but I could have. I guess, but yeah, I was, and just to come back to the bucket list thing, because I had started following like actual natural bodybuilding federations well before in Finland we had the opportunity to compete in drug tested classic bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And then I actually competed in the classic bodybuilding class, and I did a bunch of shows. I can't remember. I think I did 8 seasons total in classic bodybuilding,
Well, okay.
and I even I was top 6 at IFBB World Championships.
Right, right.
Even though that's not really a natural show, but it's like I did better than I thought.
Yeah.
And uh, anyway, I kind of I had my classic bodybuilding IFBB career there, and then I figured, okay, now I'm probably retired because my last show was in 2018.
Yeah.
But then like that had been my entire competitive like from age 23 to 35,
Hmm.
and but I had always wanted to do the real natty federations.
Mm.
And then last year, from somewhere, I just saw that the INBA European Championships are actually in Denmark, and
Yeah.
that piqued my interest.
Hmm.
And then I had been following, especially the UK guys, because I can kind of read German. The German guys are really good too, but
Yeah.
I sometimes follow their stuff. But my German isn't as good as my English,
Right.
so I had been following your federation, the UK DFBA and the WNBF UK, even the BNBF,
Yeah.
for years. Yeah, like since Rich Gusdecki and Gavin Gibson were like the top guys in the UK DFBA, and there was like another federation too that they
It
were.
was the MPA, which is still around.
And
That's a,
yeah, that's the one, and they had
yeah.
like their world championships in France or something
Right.
back in the day. But like that was still in the back of my mind. And I was like, now I'm gonna do it. Like I'm an old fucker. Can I swear here? Yeah,
That's
but
fine.
like
That's fine.
yeah. It's like I'm over 40, and I've always wanted to do these natty federations,
Mm.
and that was like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing, and it was such a great experience,
Yeah.
all those 3 shows, and in a different way, all of them, but it was just fun. It was really cool. Plus, like, yeah, I had been retired for what 5 6 years at that point, so
Hmm.
and I wasn't sure if I could still compete because of all the injuries and all that stuff. But yeah, so I did the WNBF Supernaturals. We were in the same category, and we
Yeah.
had a close battle there.
Yeah. No,
But
you
innocent,
you beat me hands down. You yeah.
well, I'm
You
not sure.
you
I'm not so sure about that. But it's like innocent was. It was funny because uh, innocent. What's his last name?
and it's Carlu. Yeah.
Carlo. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
He.
anyway, backstage, me and my buddy, we were like saying, okay, like that guy's gonna win no matter what he does, and
Mm,
that's kind of what happened because he didn't know how to pose at all, and he
yeah.
was like turning the wrong way, and he was doing like his side poses facing the rear, pretty much.
Right.
And I was noticing that during the comparisons, and in my mind, I was like, okay, well, that kind of plays in my favor, but he's still gonna beat me. He's just so physically superior,
Yeah.
and he
Incredible.
win. Yeah, and he went on to win the Masters overall at the WNBF Worlds, and
He
even
did.
placed
Yeah. He
top.
became a pro,
Yeah,
and he's posing, I believe, really improved from
yeah.
that
We
show
we
to the next one.
I'm sure a lot of people told him. We told him that, come on, like your physique is supreme. Like you just gotta spend some time practicing posing. And
Mhm.
yeah, I'm pretty sure we weren't the only ones telling him that. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was at the WNBF. It was like the atmosphere there was really cool, and it's a big show in
Mm.
Europe. I think it's like probably one of the bigger natty bodybuilding shows. And one of the things that was funny, like fun and an interesting addition was like the what was it, the Mr. Golden Era thing that you won our
Yeah, the golden era. Yeah, I won that. So I actually put a lot of practice into
yeah.
those poses because my posing coach, he made sure that I could nail a golden era pose for each
Yeah.
side. And having spoken to my other like coach, my contest prep coach, Josh, he because I said to him, I said, "Do you think I should do like classic physique?" And he was like, "No, no." He said, "I've got more of a build for bodybuilding."
Mm.
Yeah, because I've got kind of short legs and a long torso, which I don't think is like a defining feature of classic, but I think it
Uh,
helps to have like a limbs maybe. But I
oh yeah, in general, it seems like the classic physique guys are taller.
yeah
Uh, but for example, yeah, at the same time, the rules kind of stipulate that you should have a an aesthetic
yeah
classic lines physique,
I
and
think I
that's
could do
something
classic. Yeah, I've got
you could you have really nice lines
mm,
actually, and for me the classic physique division just based on that you have to have like an aesthetic good lines because I don't have that. I'm kind of like a general average structure kind of guy.
mhm,
So yeah, I never plus yeah the Mr. Golden Era poses I practiced some of those too, but I
mm.
knew that my physique isn't really like suited for that. Whereas you were perfect for that in our category, in our class. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a really fun competition, that WNBF Supernaturals, and yeah, I didn't have any expectations for those because for the I don't know, like I've been following natural bodybuilding, on the outside, kind of from Finland, um, over the internet for decades at this point, and especially the level of conditioning. It's
Mm,
pretty much a conditioning show when it comes to the top. It's like who has the most glute striations at the
mhm.
end of it, and so I knew I had to push conditioning further than I ever had been before, and just having seen the pictures of the guys before, I was just expecting to be fatter than everybody else.
Right.
So I pushed conditioning, and I still didn't get like uh, I would say top tier level conditioning.
Okay.
I had good conditioning,
Was it the leanest
but
you'd got to, would you say?
it was on par with the leanest that I've ever got to. I would say it was close to my all time best, which was 2011 when
Mhm.
I actually won the Nordic championships in IFBB Classic Bodybuilding, and I also placed top six in the IFBB World Championships.
Right.
But because I had kind of a lot of less injuries back then, I think I was like 5 kilos heavier back then. So
Wow. Wow.
I've lost a lot of size just over the years because I have so many nagging injuries and all that stuff. So, but
Mm.
yeah, coming with zero expectations, just first time ever, competing in these natty federations. It was such a blast. It was such a fun time, and same thing. Then I get to do the UK DFBA, and it was a different lineup. It was
Yeah.
yeah, and the one guy that I had known of before was Alex Harvey
Yeah.
because he had won like the universe, and I had seen all the pictures. Like his conditioning is just it's sick.
Mm.
It's downright sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was. I knew I was up against basically a world champion there
Yeah.
as well. So placing second to him, actually with a split decision.
Was it
They
really?
mentioned,
Wow, I didn't know that.
yeah, they announced that during the like award ceremony. So I
Yeah.
guess I did all right. But
Yeah, it
yeah,
was you,
and
Alex, and James Durham, top three, wasn't it? I remember that.
yeah, and that was actually funny because they had 2 rounds of the first like compare first call out comparisons,
Mm.
and they had Alex first in the middle, then they switched me in the middle, and then after the 2 rounds of comparisons, they took the three of us, Alex, myself, and James, out of the lineup in the back, and then they continued comparing the rest of the guys, and I was like, okay, well, that's pretty good. We're probably top three, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay, but I look kind of fat next to these two guys, so
Yeah,
because they were both just peeled inside out. So
yeah, you do. I compete with James four times actually.
yeah,
Last year we went to Germany together for Worlds and we did a qualifier, a British final, and another show with the UK DFBA, and he gets inside out peel, doesn't he? It's crazy to see.
Yeah, there was like on my own YouTube video, I remember this comment a Finnish guy was saying like he was referring to James like he's so lean. How can he be alive? It
Yeah,
was
that's
like,
crazy. But yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, I wanted to. So yes, you've been training and competing for a very long time. Um, Interestingly, although we're of a similar age, I think you're a little. How old are you, Uti?
I'm 42.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I was
1 year
born
older than me.
in
Yeah.
yeah, I was born in 83. So
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, year older. So, yeah, we took like a very different trajectory when it come to like bodybuilding. So I didn't step on stage until 2015 for my first show. So I'd been training for 14, yeah, I think it was 14 years up until that point.
yeah.
Um, and I remember I said this to someone on another episode. I think there are pros and cons to both approaches. To competing quite early, I think, yeah, if you've got like a really good structure, really good genetics, I think competing quite early can be a good thing just to get that stage experience. Whereas if kind
Yeah.
of your structure potentially isn't a strong point, then I think it might be best to potentially just wait a little bit until you build that solid base of muscle before stepping on stage. See, I was 31 when I first competed, and on
Mm,
reflection, I could have probably competed like in my mid 20s. I just didn't have like the
probably, yeah.
maturity to do so. Wasn't in the right place. What are your views on this when it comes to like when to compete for the first time?
Yeah, it's also a factor of just your biological age because I think a lot of I I seriously wouldn't go competing as a teen, or I wouldn't suggest a
Interesting.
lot of guys compete as a teen or even in their early 20s because you're kind of robbing yourself of those best years of potential development. And like I get and it's not like a black and white thing that I can say that nobody should ever compete before 20, but it's I think if you do like because obviously there's a teen division and sometimes you have like two of them like sub 17 or sub 20 or
Oh,
whatever
I
these
didn't know
are
that
sub.
one.
Yeah, it depends on the
Yeah,
federation actually. Uh, and actually in the IFBB, I think the junior cutoff is as high. It used to be 23. So if
yeah.
you sub 23, and that was actually pretty good. Now I think it's 21. But anyway, a lot of guys compete a lot as a teen, or like they do year after year before they are old enough to not qualify for the teen category anymore. And I think they could probably just do less of those seasons, like compete
Mm,
maybe once as a teen or a junior because those years are for your development and just building the foundation and the size. And plus also if you're trying to get as lean as, for example, in natural bodybuilding, the standard is,
yeah.
and the guys are pushing it, it takes a lot out of a of your body,
Mm,
especially if you're uh, under 20 years old.
yeah.
And yeah, it's a I don't know. I competed the first time at 23,
Okay.
so I guess that was I had 9 years in the gym at that time, plus like
Fair
10
amount
years
still.
of yeah. But I had been doing like hundreds of push-ups and lateral raises and pull-ups and sit-ups every day since I was 5 years old because I was
Mm,
just waiting to get to the gym because they
yeah.
had like in Finland, they used to have this thing that you could only go there after you're 16 or something.
Right. Yeah.
So at 14, I guess I looked old enough to pass for a 16-year old.
Hmm.
But anyway, yeah. Of course, it's a personal decision, but I think a lot of the younger guys they would be probably better off competing less as a
Yeah,
teenager and
that
just
makes sense.
building size and maturing the physique, and then when you're well into your 20s,
Mm,
maybe start competing then. Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I agree with that actually. There was I think if you're gonna go in competition as a teen, yeah, maybe wait until you're like, yeah, 18, 19, and then
Mhm.
just do one show, but also keep some in the tank when it comes to conditioning. Don't go crazy.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
just do it for the experience and
Mm,
the like the one thing that you get from competing, which you can't get from anywhere else, is that like the level of motivation to be
mm,
better the next time.
yeah.
So that can't be overstated. It's like guys who haven't competed once, they can't understand how much it drives you forward when you go, you test yourself in
Yeah.
actual competition against other guys, and usually only one guy wins,
Mm,
and it's usually not you.
yeah.
So then you got a chip on your shoulder, for the
Mm,
next 2 or 3 years, and
that's
that chip
true.
on your shoulder is like that can make a big difference.
Yeah, I completely agree with that actually. And yeah, that reminds me of because I put a post up on my Instagram recently of two photos side to side of a 3 year difference between my physiques, and there's like about it's actually over 5 kilos of weight difference
Yeah, I
between the
commented
two.
on
And you
that, something
commented on
similar.
it because
Yeah.
mentioning like that competitive drive can really push you. And yeah, like there's legitimately similar body fat with 5 kilos of weight difference
Mm.
because competing wasn't on my mind back then, but it is now. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's so true. Going back to the teen thing, though, there is a teen in the UK, Willpower. I'm not sure if you're aware of him. He's a very heavily muscled guy, but he kind of did it right in my opinion. He didn't get crazy pilled, but he still became world champion at DFAC Worlds. And
right.
yeah,
Oh
I think
yeah.
yeah he's.
Actually, didn't he take second place at the WNBF?
Oh,
I
I'm not sure actually if he did the WNBF. He did the BNBF qualifiers, which I was at. He did the final. He won that, and then he
Because if
did
he if he,
DFAC
if he
Worlds.
was the guy who won, I'm really terrible at names, but
Mm.
I think I remember him because it was Tom Lee, or like a
Oh no, he was a
really.
junior. Tom, yeah.
Oh yeah, was it a different? But I think Tom Lee won the WNBF UK junior category, and the second place guy, I think he was the who you're talking about,
It
who
might
went
be.
to
Yes, that could have been him. Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
really extremely well developed guys, both for their age, especially. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to see. Yeah, something else you said interesting. One of my physique updates a few months actually, which got me thinking. You made, I think I was talking about genetics, and you made a point that you feel my genetics are probably in like the top 10 to 20% when it comes
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
but genetics of bodybuilding. And obviously, being that we spend a lot of time on social media and
Mm.
see just the cream of the crop, the best physiques, it can definitely skew our perception of what a good physique actually is. I have my views on this, but I'd like to hear yours on it too. So, how do you feel an athlete should approach like the topic of genetics in like a positive way?
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, your genetics are set. There's nothing you can do about your genetics. So, um, letting like an idea, a thought process, or something that people start doubting their own genetics, and okay, I don't have the genetics to do X, Y, or Z. That's just so useless and so counterproductive. And it's even though it might be true, if you're, I don't know, you're never going to grow taller than 163 centimeters. You're never going to play in the NBA unless you're
Mm.
Muggsy Bogues or something. So it's like, sure, there are, but if you're that short, you're probably not even interested in basketball to begin with. So it's kind of I don't know. It's yeah, to make a long answer short, which is hard for me. uh, I don't think anybody ever gained anything by focusing on how good their or bad their genetics are,
Mm.
because it can go both ways. It's like if you focus on how bad your genetics are, you're just really limiting uh, how far you could possibly go if you didn't have that self doubt.
Mm.
And if you're focusing on, excuse me, how good your genetics are, that usually makes you lazy. It's
Yeah.
like so I think the best thing is just like forget about your genetics.
Mm.
Your genetics are set in stone before you're born, and there's nothing you can do about it. So why bother thinking about it one way or the other? Just do the
Mm.
best you can. And oftentimes, especially for example, I've always been very critical of myself in anything that I do, or hope to do well in, and I've always just considered my genetics pure shit
Right,
for
right.
bodybuilding.
Yeah.
But I didn't let that sort of hinder work ethic and all that. I just did the best that I could.
Yeah.
And looking back, especially like I placed top 6 at IFBB World Championships in classic bodybuilding as a lifetime natty.
Mm.
Twice I did that, and I never would have thought that would happen. So it's like that's just one example, but oftentimes people can do better than what they originally, you can surprise yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then come back to the other side of the coin. Like usually, if somebody is so confident in their genetics, they're always constantly told that you have superior genetics and what, or maybe they believe it. It usually just leads to laziness. So
Yeah.
so that's not good at also. Yeah.
Yeah, some good points there. And I completely agree, to be fair. Like I've seen people's physiques change like so drastically over the course of decades. That yeah, for me it's clear that great things can be achieved with even average genetics. It's usually just got to be consistent and
Mm.
retain that drive. So, yeah, I'm confident I can push my physique a lot further than it currently
Oh
is.
yeah, I remember kind of vaguely what I told you about. Like I've coached a lot of competitors since I started coaching in 2005, even before I actually competed myself for the first
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
So like just based on how many competitors I've coached to the stage and how many I've seen during the last 20 years,
Mm,
I would just say that okay, there's a lot of different mm, facets to genetics,
mm,
but the ones you can see is obviously shape and structure, and
yeah.
at least those things, like you're you're way up there. You're in like the top 10% or top 15% at least,
Mm.
and it's if you put on some, I would say, would you say that you're? I think you said that you're probably now the biggest you've ever been.
Yeah, I've got the most. I've been heavier than this before by about 4 kilos. I'm about 85-ish, 86
But the
kilos now.
most muscular.
I'd
So
say,
so
yeah,
you
this is the most
yeah yeah
muscle I've got on my frame that I've ever had before, for sure.
yeah. So you're like because your frame and your structure is exceptionally good,
Mm,
and on that type of a frame and structure, and your muscle shape and everything, even just a few pounds of muscle can
mm,
make a drastic difference.
yeah.
Whereas if you have a more average structure, something like myself, you need to put on, you know, even more muscle to make a similar difference in
Mm,
the visual outlook. And for myself, it's like, I actually never want to turn pro, even though it's because I've always kind of looked at it the way that um, I don't have the genetics to do well as a natural pro,
okay.
because it's like too many genetic limitations. Plus, I'm getting old and all that stuff. But it's I would rather just continue competing as a good amateur, you
Hmm.
know, rather than maybe get a pro card and then place last in every show that I do afterwards. So it's like
Mm,
whereas for even though you're my age,
mm.
you're in a different boat. I feel because you could really push it a lot further, yeah, and even do well in as a pro. I would think, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah,
Oh,
that's
thank you.
just my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, that's one of my aims, but we shall see. But
Yeah.
yeah. Moving on, Uti. But yeah, thank you
Mm,
for the kind words. Appreciate that. I've talked about this before. I kind of lucked out in a bit with discovering the gym. For me, because I don't know about yourself, I got started purely as like an aesthetic endeavor. I just wanted to look better.
mm,
And yeah, like 2.5 decades later, yeah, I'm hopefully obviously a lot healthier than I would have been had I not started lifting weights. But yeah, something
yeah.
I've not actually asked anyone, and interestingly, it's not something I've even really considered like, asking myself. Is like the reason of wanting to compete. Because presenting the physique in like the way that we do on stage, it's kind of an extreme thing in many ways, and I
Mm.
feel people's like motivation to do it may vary from person to person. But what made you want to, I guess, graduate from lifting weights to actually competing on stage?
Yeah, that's for me was not an aesthetics thing. It wasn't about looking good. It was
Okay.
just purely. a drive to compete,
Mm.
for a competitive outlet, because I've always been a competitive athlete since I started in track and field athletics. I still, I think, I haven't checked in a few years, but when I did track and field from age 9 to age 15. And okay, those are like really like kids categories, but in all of those kids categories, you have like, I've broken several like national records in
Wow.
several different events, and I have some Finnish championships from those ages. And to be honest, if my body had withstood track and field,
Mm.
that was probably the sport I was most gifted in.
Right.
And I would have been, because the guys I competed against in various events and I actually beat them, those who continued, they actually went to represent Finland in the Olympics and
Wow.
later. So that's kind of a pretty good benchmark for that. But I wasn't able to continue it. But that was probably like the sport that I was most talented for.
Right.
Uh, then I also did basketball, and I played at a pretty high level. We won like a unofficial Nordic championship, and I even played for 1 year in Texas and as an exchange student in high school. But yeah, those were, because the point is, my entire like well, let's say youth, is it called youthhood,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah, when I was growing up, I was always a competitive athlete.
Mm.
And after basketball ended, I stopped it at 17.
Mm.
Then I was like kind of lost for several years. I had started, training when I was 14 at the gym, and I always wanted to compete, but there was no natural bodybuilding federation in Finland, as we
Right.
discussed. So there was like this void, and that I had a competitive drive. I wanted a competitive outlet, and lots of other, natty guys in Finland in the same boat at that same
Mm.
time. And then we had to wait until, 2004, 2005, when they introduced the drug tested classic bodybuilding. So it was
Yeah.
always just a competitive sport thing for me. And like secondarily an aesthetics thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Interesting. Yeah, it's always been more of a competitive drive thing for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I remember when I just didn't know natural bodybuilding was a thing when I first started.
Mm.
I had Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, which I still have,
Yeah,
and it's amazing.
I as well. Yeah, everybody needs to have that.
Everyone
Yeah.
has that. Yeah, I remember
Do you
paying
have
like
like the first edition with the old pictures, or the slightly updated version? Because the first edition is the best one.
yeah, I think I bought it in about 2001, I want to say.
It has to be the second one. It's got like
Uh,
Dorian Yates in it and
oh no,
whatever.
mine doesn't have Dorian Yates. Mine's all black and white, and it goes up to Tom Platz is like the Bertil Fox with the latest bodybuilders in it, I'd say.
Oh, so you actually have the first edition. That's so cool, because
Mm,
I have the second edition, which
right.
it's got some of the 90s bodybuilders in
I
it.
see. No, I don't have that.
Yeah, I wish I had the first edition. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's humongous. It's like that,
Oh
but
yeah,
it's
it's like,
yeah.
yeah, it's literally like a Bible.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's probably the most expensive book I've ever paid for, which yeah, it's like 50 or 60 pounds back in the day, which is a lot. Something else I wanted to touch on, Uti, we chatted about this before off air, was a whole kind of social media thing, which is quite an
Yeah.
interesting topic. And in my head, I could be way off here, but I feel that like people's motivation to compete would have been very different 2 decades ago,
Mm,
purely due to the fact that there was no social media. And if someone was going to compete back then, the motivation, I guess, would more likely be like an intrinsic motivation,
hmm
not just to gain, obviously, a following. It's funny, yeah. So when I first competed 2015, social media, it was a thing, and Instagram was still quite a big deal 14 years ago. Or sorry, no,
mm.
2015, 10 years ago. But I started training in 2001, and yeah, I was just training, doing the work, and yeah, there was no posting. I barely took a photo of myself, and
There
it
were
was
no
very,
digital cameras back then. It
yeah,
was
yeah, it
because
was,
I remember I was probably one of the first guys to have a digital camera. And
mm,
this was like early 2000s or something. So I
mm,
was able to have a blog in 2006 with
right,
daily pictures. and
Mm.
that was like something nobody else had.
Right, right.
And that was like a real competitive advantage back in the day, that I had a
Mhm.
blog with daily pictures. so
Interesting.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's changed so much. It's crazy, and it just goes to show how old we are.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Do you think there's probably people want to compete for the wrong reasons now?
Yeah, it's like probably there have always been at least a little bit, like a portion of the people competing doing it for let's call it unhealthy reasons,
Mm.
in one way or another. But that portion of everybody on stage has probably skyrocketed
Yeah.
over the last, I would, well, it coincides with current social media. I
Yeah. Yeah.
wouldn't say Facebook, which started in like the 2000s. I wouldn't say that caused a similar thing as TikTok and Instagram.
Right, right.
So Instagram, when did that start? Like 2000, early 2010s or something.
It was around that kind of time. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been around like over 10 years, maybe even up to 15 years. And then this latest abomination of TikTok. I don't know how long that's been
I
around, but
don't
that's
use that
even
to be fair. And yeah.
yeah. No, I've never touched it, and
No, no.
it's even worse. But
Mm.
those two clearly, and there's actually a lot of research that's been done. I suppose it's sociology research or whatever, but there's like they found correlations between they call it like fitness social media, like people who follow fitness influencers and all that kind
Mm.
of stuff, and just gear use.
Right,
How
right.
how how early they found like a smaller, what they call a gap time between let's say graduating from legal performance enhancing supplements to
Hmm.
illegal performance enhancing drugs,
Mm.
just based on how much you are following fitness social media.
Yeah.
And then there's also like the psychological research on that not just the fitness influencers, which probably are, they have a very strong effect in, but social media in general, because it's not true. What you
No.
see on social media, it's not reality. It's like this. It's like an ad for everybody. It's
Mm.
it's like a curated advertisement of, hey, look at how great my life is, and I spent like 2 hours getting this perfect shot, and and it's I think it's like the more time people spend on social media, period, it correlates so strongly with like lower self-esteem and just depression and all that stuff. So a lot of a lot of harmful stuff has come from that, and you can see that in the competitive landscape, especially when um, I would have to say that the introduction of like the women's less muscled divisions,
Yeah.
because originally you only had, actually first you had fitness.
Right.
Okay, so you had female bodybuilding originally, but then you had fitness with the routine. Then because not a lot of girls could do the acrobatics and stuff, which was which is part of the routine fitness. Then they just eliminated the routine and they came up with body fitness or figure,
Right.
and that is still like pretty heavily muscled compared to what they have the bikini. And well, the wellness is, it's like it's like a heavily muscled lower body, but still like a bikini upper body. But all
Mm.
these different divisions, and the same thing, with the board shorts division, the men's physique, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
which started around I think 2013, 14, I can't remember when it was. Maybe it was
Mm.
earlier than that, but those are more accessible, and they're also like more suitable for that specific goal of what would you call it, like competing for social media.
Yeah.
It's like, because if you compete in the, you can actually compete with less training and less background in those divisions, and you can probably compete more often in those. And that's what you see, is that the people who probably compete for slightly the I don't want to say the wrong reasons
Mm.
because that would imply that I know the right reasons, but kind of like somewhat sketchy reasons. It's you probably see that a lot more in those divisions. It would be
That's
really yeah, it would be really hard for somebody to just do a hardcore bodybuilding prep up until they're having striated glutes just for social media, even though you see that as well.
yeah,
And I applaud anybody who can do
yeah.
that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really interesting take, actually. I'd never really thought of it in terms of categories that are more leaning towards social media, but it's true, and I guess that's what I
Yeah,
like.
yeah. I wouldn't say that they're designed for that or
No, no.
leaning towards, but they lend themselves more. Like if somebody wants to do it for those reasons, they're
Mhm.
probably going to pick those categories.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, because
Yeah,
that's why I'm drawn to bodybuilding because it's kind of simple. You just have to get as big and as shredded as possible,
yeah,
and you've got
yeah,
everything on show. The glutes, if your glutes aren't in, they're not in. And yeah, there's no hiding. There's no hiding in bodybuilding, but I'm a simple man. That's why I like that. However, I think when I first competed in 2015, I might have considered potentially doing men's physique. I had that kind of aesthetic look
yeah, yeah.
potentially, but at the
Sure.
same time, yeah, I know that I never would have enjoyed it.
But to be fair, in the IFBB, the men's physique division is just the quarter turns.
Right,
So they
okay.
don't do any type of like double biceps or side chest poses or whatever, which I actually enjoyed seeing in the Natty federations when they
Right.
did men's physique, because that was way more like I could actually relate to that. I was like,
Mm.
okay, this guy has a really good back when he does a back double biceps, even though he has board shorts on and I
Mm.
can't really judge the legs.
Yeah.
But that was really cool to see that the Natty federations include also like bodybuilding poses in the men's physique division.
That is good.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But for example, in your case, like you're probably like your most dominant body part is your quads, which are crazy, like
Mm.
really swept out, and so it makes no sense in the world to put on
Mm.
like long board shorts to hide that because
No,
it's
no.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, and that's the thing that a lot of the men's physique guys, they've got awesome physiques. They really do.
Yes,
It's
yes,
it's almost a
yeah.
shame to hide it in the board shorts. You just
Yeah.
want to see the whole thing.
And another thing, but this only relates to enhanced bodybuilding, is in the IFBB Pro divisions, it's funny because classic physique, they do have the weight cap,
Right.
which limits how much muscle they can, fit on their frame.
Mm.
In men's physique, they don't have a weight cap.
Right.
And it's like a running joke. I've heard it on so many podcasts, and you can just see this, that there are actually guys who are way more muscular and
Mm.
bigger in the men's physique division because they don't have to fit under the weight cap.
Yeah, yeah.
So the physiques can actually be more extreme on
Yeah.
that side. Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it, really? Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. Uh, you've been training a long time now, and yeah, I find it interesting to delve into how athletes kind of training has changed over the years. Like from my own
Mhm.
perspective, like putting aside like the total volume, like sets and reps, etc. One thing that's changed for me is I'm probably, yeah, definitely able to stimulate the target muscle a lot more than say a decade or two ago. My eccentrics are probably a little slower, and there's just more control over the movement,
Yeah.
less chasing of weight. How would you say your training has evolved over the years?
I could do like a 3 hour
Yeah.
solo rant on this, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna try to condense it a little bit.
Mm,
In fact, I would say that there's a pretty good parallel between Finland and the UK in the sense that Dorian Yates is kind of like a semi-god or demigod in both
really?
countries, and it's like the reasons in Finland. I obviously because he's kind of like your all-time best guy because he won 6 Olympias and he was just like completely dominant at his
Mm,
prime in his prime when he was competing against the American top guys in the pro ranks. However, in Finland, the whole vibe of this, because it was how should I put this? It's like you look at all the California pros, the guys, driving like a flashy car to Venice, Gulf
Hmm.
Venice, and pumping up under the sun, and wearing shades when they're training, sunglasses, and uh, it's that's really not going to resonate with like a traditional working class Finnish guy who's training in a basement gym. And whereas Dorian,
Mm.
that was like the prototype. Like that's what everybody in Finland wanted to be like. It was like the unassuming guy, all covered up, working hard in silence in that basement, and then just every year once he shows up and destroys everybody. So plus it was a in fact I've always kind of said this, it's an over exaggeration, but historically Finland has produced kind of what I call the world's strongest and the worst bodybuilders.
Right,
So
right,
it's like
okay.
like everybody in Finland who say they train bodybuilding, they're like really strong, but they really don't have much to show for it when they go compete against bodybuilders from other countries. And
Mm.
that's an over exaggeration, obviously, but there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Because we've had like any year you pick a random amateur bodybuilder like in the Finnish nationals on the enhanced side, and they could probably almost compete in like the world's strongest man, but
Mm.
they don't even have a pro card.
Right.
So it's is so. But anyway, that actually we have a long history of this mentality that unless the muscle is built through really heavy, hard, like I would call it strength training instead
Yeah.
of bodybuilding training, it's not real muscle.
Right, right. I see.
Yeah, so that influenced me in the beginning a
Yeah.
lot. So and yeah, I was just pushing the heaviest weights that I could, and it was actually fun for the time being because I could, when I was still without injuries, when I was younger, I was actually way stronger than my muscle mass would have predicted, and it's but obviously only certain muscle groups, the ones that respond to low volumes and really heavy weights. It was my basically my posterior chain and maybe my chest, but
Right.
I never got any growth in my more lagging muscle groups, which are like
Mm.
quads and arms and side delts and something. And those only started growing after I think I banged my head against the wall for over 5 years, maybe even 7 years, just trying to, push more weight.
Yeah.
And at some point I was like, this is stupid. Like
Hmm.
I'm doing like, at my best, I did, below parallel, free barbell squats, with 180 kilos for 20 reps.
Wow.
And I had small quads.
Right,
And,
right.
and it's like, this makes no sense to, to
Mm.
continue this trajectory. And funny enough, when I actually switched my training towards the other end of the spectrum, which is like really focused hypertrophy training and
Yeah.
not focusing so much on the weight initially, and just feeling the muscles working and targeting the muscle instead of just trying to move weight from point A to point B, that's when I started for the first time seeing some progress also
Mm.
in my like more stubborn body parts. So there's been a lot of plus mm, I've always kind of thought for myself, I think more so than the average gym guy. But even I was like for years, like I was so heavily into that, tradition of, only heavyweight is allowed.
Mm.
And, if you build muscle in any other way, it's not real muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it kind of like today is it's I think it's been like pretty cool for the last 15 years, 10, 15 years, because uh, nowadays people actually understand that bodybuilding training, hypertrophy training is not the same thing as maximal strength training or
No.
powerlifting, or and there's like nuances in functional anatomy and exercise technique and rep ranges and whatnot. And of course, then there's also just getting older,
Mm.
which kind of forces you to become even more controlled and more
Yeah.
picky with your exercises and maybe shift your rep ranges slightly higher, because I hate high reps. Like
Mm.
because I did like I'm pretty fast twitch dominant by by my genetics because I was a sprinter and
Yeah.
a triple jumper and a long jumper in track and field. So I'm not an endurance type of guy by nature, and anything over 8 reps seems like a really long set for me.
Right,
But
right.
as I so when I started training, everything was like 4 to 6 reps for
Right.
max
Wow, that's
weight,
very low.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and it worked well for those few muscle groups, not as well for the others. But
Yeah.
as long as my body could tolerate it, it was like really fun to train that way. But then when you kind of notice that, okay, not everything grows with this, then you adjust. And then when you get older, because I've also had a lot of nagging pains and injuries, even since I was 9 years old, actually.
Right.
But those have just, kept cropping up and cropping up as age has, increased. You end up like what I'm doing today at plus 40 is I rarely go below 10 reps on anything. On a
Mm.
lot of stuff I have to do, like I have to start with 15 to 20 reps on the first exercise just to further get warmed up enough
Yeah.
so that I can kind of try to go sub 15,
Yeah.
and the movements are really controlled. I even do like slow concentrics on many exercises
Okay.
because
Interesting.
yeah, which fortunately there's good research to show that even like up to, I think it's like 8 seconds per rep is
Mm.
still like what we will it's equivalent to like faster reps in terms of hypertrophy response.
Mm.
Once you go like 10 seconds per rep, then it's kind of too slow. But
Yeah.
so there's a lot of leeway to just work around pains and injuries and
Yeah.
whatnot. But yeah, I remember when I was 20 years old and doing the 4 to 6 rep stuff and nothing hurt, and I was
Hmm.
like, what are all these old guys, complaining about
Mm.
their injuries, and what is this? I'm never going to be one of those guys.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, now I'm there.
And now you know.
But,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, some great points. Mine's probably very, very similar, actually. Yeah, I've got a few little niggles here and there, and I find one thing that's changed for me is I have to warm up a lot more for exercises than I used to. Or maybe not, I don't
Mm,
have to, but I just do. It just feels better if I have one or two, sometimes even three or four warm-up sets before doing a movement. So that's definitely changed for me. Yeah, I'm the same. Rep range is it's 10 reps and above for me, sometimes as high as 20 for certain movements. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I think things have definitely changed. I've spoken to a few bodybuilders in their 40s, and they've confirmed my thoughts, which is the muscles kind of take on a different look after years and years of training. So yeah, more density, like a more of a compact kind of look. Your physique definitely seems to have that kind of look, in my opinion. That there's a graininess to it, a kind of lean, dense look. What are your thoughts on the whole muscle maturity thing? And do you feel your physique has changed into your 40s or late, let's say late 30s into your 40s?
I actually never, that's one thing I never kind of believed in was the concept of muscle maturity.
Mm, okay.
Although I can't categorically prove it wrong.
Mm,
And I don't know who could, but it's like I've seen so many. Well, for example, uh, Tom Lee, the junior guy who won at
yeah, yeah,
WNBF, like he's grainy as hell.
yeah.
Also, like what is he, 21 or something
He's
years
like,
old?
yeah,
And
he's young. Yeah.
yeah, so you've seen so many even like junior competitors who have a grainy look,
Mm,
and then at the same time, you can have a lot of experienced masters competitors who don't have a grainy look, even though they might be lean.
mm,
So it could also be a function of, but this is just wild speculation. Uh, Generally, like the high threshold motor units, like your faster twitch muscle fibers, I believe they tend to be located more on the surface of the muscle, and the deeper. So it's like if you ever trained heavier, that would explain like the old adage of heavy training builds
mm.
grading muscle or whatever. That's the only actual like physiological sort of explanation I have ever come across that would explain that.
Yeah.
But in reality, there's, like I said, juniors who look grainy, masters competitors who never look grainy.
Mm.
There's it's probably a factor of so many individual things that you can't
Yeah.
just attribute it to age or even like training age.
Yeah, interesting take on that. Yeah, I hadn't really considered it. I imagine things like skin, the way our skin changes
Oh
over
yeah,
time
yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
That's although yeah, skin elasticity actually goes down, so it's
Mm.
you have better skin elasticity when you're younger, and that would actually play against it. However, yeah, it's true that sometimes your skin gets more frail when it like
Mm.
basically thinner
Yeah,
as
yeah.
you age. So that could play into it. But I think the one thing that is highly correlated with for like more experienced competitors achieving a grainier look is
Mm.
just it's experience in
Mm.
diet and it's experience in getting leaner without losing all that muscle that you
Yeah.
might have lost when you were younger and less experienced. Also, obviously, if well, for me, it's a little bit different because I had several kilos more muscle, 10 years ago because I didn't have as many nagging pains and injuries.
Yeah, yeah.
But in general, you look at the same guys who maybe, in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they usually accumulate, muscle throughout that time and maybe up until, I mean, you can see top guys, especially in natural bodybuilding, who are like at their peak
Mm.
between their 40s and 50s,
Yeah.
even muscle mass wise. So
Mm.
that definitely plays into it because uh, I think Cliff Wilson put this pretty well, and it's like a pretty simple thing if you just think about it. The more muscle you have on your frame, which kind of correlates with training age,
Yeah.
it's going to push against the skin more than less muscle.
Mm.
So even if you just get to the same amount of body fat, or you have the same, let's say, mass of skin around your muscles,
Mm.
if you have more muscle mass pushing up against that skin, it will look harder. It will look
Mm.
grainier. So that could be an explaining factor.
That's an
Also,
interesting
yeah,
point. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I hadn't really considered that, but that makes sense in my head. Yeah, no, that's interesting there. When would you say your like, most productive time of training was, UTC? Yeah, you've been training for a long time. What
yeah.
decade would
Well,
you say? Would it be the noob years, the 20s?
obviously everybody gets their most gains when they start out,
Yeah, yeah.
so like nothing beats the newbie gains. But yeah, first when I started, it was nonsensical. It was full body, 3 hours at a time, every single exercise I could just make up in the gym, and I would
Mm.
do those every day and then just go and eat and sleep. And even though that was super dumb and made no sense, I still made absolutely terrific gains. I think I gained like 20 kilos my first year, and I wasn't any like fatter after that.
Wow, that's
But I
cool.
started at 181 centimeters and 50 kg.
Right, wow,
So
that's very light.
yeah, so I was super. I think my body mass index was like in the dangerously low category or
Mm.
something. I was
Yeah.
so skinny. But then, yeah, then you after you get your newbie gains, then you kind of enter your early intermediate phase when you actually have to start doing some things right. And uh, I say that, yeah, when I really started pushing, it was like after 5 6 years of training when I really started pushing progressive overload. This was like the last stages of when I was still believing in that, okay, everything just needs to be heavy.
Yeah, yeah.
So so I actually did doc rap training, DC training.
Heard of that,
And
yeah.
yeah, and that was like solely focused on, it was low volume, relatively high frequency. Like the frequency was okay, it was almost like twice per week, but really low volume, and just beating the logbook every time on those specific exercises. And that actually yielded another kind of a, I wouldn't call it a growth spurt, but in those better muscle groups that I mentioned, like my posterior chain and my chest.
Mm.
But still, no growth in my quads, no growth in my arms, and so, and then for those lagging muscle groups, then like that was the final thing, was when I finally just had enough courage to, discard the heavier is better mentality and start to. I actually kind of threw the logbook out on my arm day, and I was like, okay, I'm not even going to look at the weight. I'm just going to pick up a pair of dumbbells and squeeze my biceps against that resistance, and go until I can't go anymore. And it was crazy. It was like within 2 weeks, I had stretch marks in my biceps.
Mm.
And then I did the same thing for quads and side delts and all the other muscle groups that had really not benefited from the heavier stuff before. So that was like the final real yeah, I wouldn't call it a growth spurt, but like a really good period of progress.
Mm.
And once I did that for like 2 years, focusing more on concentrated, targeted hypertrophy training for those lagging muscle groups, then actually that was when I was finally kind of ready to compete. So,
Right.
and after that, it's been really, really slow. And I even tried like a super bulk. Uh, I bulked up to 127 kilos
Oh wow, really?
after my second competitive season.
Yeah.
So it was like for 2 years, I just it was a linear bulk, and it was really hard for me because my body doesn't like to get super fat. It
Yeah.
was like I was just forcing the food down, and I got stronger than ever before. But yeah, it's I don't think that was really worth it because even though I bulked up like 30 kilos over more than 30 kilos over stage weight, and then I came back down, and it all took a long time, and I had been stronger than ever before. My stage weight went up maybe like 1 or 2 kilos or
Right.
something.
Mm.
And so that was like my one big foray into bulking.
Yeah.
And I didn't even rush the process on it. I took my time with that, and I
Mm.
I did everything as well as I could. But yeah, and now we actually have data. For example, Eric Helms authored a study pretty recently, and it's kind of like the higher rates or higher calorie surplus just beyond like a little bit. Like I think they compared 5% surplus to 15% surplus, and
Yeah.
the 15% surplus was no better in building muscle. It just
Mm.
you just got fatter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I've tried a lot of things over the 25 plus years that I've been trying to build a physique, and then at this point, it's like I'm trying to regain some of the muscle that I've lost over the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years with all the multitude of injuries and nagging pains.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Interesting. When do you think you'll be back on stage again?
Ah, that's the one thing that, because I had like a 5 year retirement, and
Right.
all that time I was still training hard, and because I love training, I'm going to train until the day I die if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
But still, there was no competitive goal. There was no competitive outlet,
Mm.
and that something was like it was a void. There was a gap. There was something missing.
Hmm.
So as soon as in 2024, I figured that okay, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna do these. I'm over 40. This is a bucket list thing. I'm gonna do the Natty Federations finally. And as soon as I decided on that, it just gives you like an extra pep in your step, and it like gives you this sense of purpose, although it's completely artificial. Like what is the sense of purpose in partaking in what's actually competitive starvation, and like just stepping on stage in a thong and flexing your muscles oiled up, like it's
Yeah.
completely artificial. But there's actually good research on what's called synthetic happiness. Is that as long as you have a goal that's important to you, it doesn't need to be like you're saving the world or doing something like super meaningful. As long as it's meaningful to you, it will count toward your happiness and your sense of purpose just as well as if you're actually saving lives.
Mm.
So yeah, that I because it was such a and I didn't realize how much I had missed the process of prepping and even competing, although that's just a small blip in
Yeah.
that because I had to prep for like 11 months or something.
Mm.
So that you have that 11-month period that every day you're doing this for a specific reason and you're moving toward that target, and it's a competitive target.
Mm,
And that was just so important for me on a day-to-day basis that even before I had done the shows, I was like, I got to do this again in like
mm,
2 or 3 years
yep,
because
yep.
it's so important. And I'm not getting any younger. I'm
Mm,
42 at this point. I figure I might have like maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 good seasons in me still before
okay.
eventually you decline, and maybe I can do Masters 50 after that.
Mm,
But yeah, I think I'm gonna do 2026. Me and my buddy, we were thinking about that because I think you met him backstage, Matias. He was
yeah.
helping me at the WNBF UK, and I've been coaching him, for example, since 2009, and he actually his best was silver medal at the IFBB European Championships
Right.
in
Well.
classic.
Mm,
And so he has a very similar background. We've both been competing for a long time
mm,
on that side. They're both lifetime drug free. So now that he also was really impressed with the natty federations, how the shows are run, and
mm,
and so I think we're kind of planning on maybe doing 2026, picking some shows,
mm,
and yeah, traveling there together, because yeah, it was such a fun thing for two old guys,
mm.
because that's what we've been doing since our 20s, pretty
Yeah,
much.
that's amazing. That's really
Yeah,
cool. That's a great story and a really important message, I think, actually. That sense of purpose you get. I think having a goal, having purpose is just going to make you a happier person, 100%. I can completely
yeah,
agree with that. Well, look, you two, this has been amazing, but we're going to have to end this soon because I have to pick
yeah.
my kids up. It's almost time for school pickup. But
Yeah,
this has been incredible. I'll have to get you on again. There's a lot of other topics I'd love to pick your brain about, but we're going to do some
that would
quick
be
fire
fun. This has
questions.
been really cool. And like I said, I've done hundreds of podcasts
Mm,
over the years, but this one was the first one in English. So
yeah,
so
that's really
that's
cool.
that's
Yeah,
that's one for the books. Yeah.
definitely, definitely. And I'm going to definitely have to
So
get you back on. Quick fire questions that are never quick fire. These always go on for longer than the few
yeah,
seconds.
especially with me, that's a pretty dangerous
Yeah.
proposition.
What is your favorite film?
Oh, it's got to be Terminator 2.
Oh,
It's
amazing.
like, yeah, that's still kind of maybe the original Matrix, also in '99.
Yeah, great
That
film. Yeah.
those are kind of my top two, like either Terminator 2 or the Matrix.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're two of my favorite films as well, actually. It's funny, I showed my kids on YouTube the part of Terminator 2. They're 4 and 8, so they're way too young to be watching the film,
Yeah.
but I showed them the bit where the T-1000 is coming over that bit with the truck and he chases John Connor
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah,
Arnie saves him and they loved it. They said, "Oh, we want to watch more. We want to watch more." But I'm like, "Nah, let's wait a
yeah.
few
Maybe not.
years."
Yeah, 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 yeah,
No, yeah, but it's
yeah.
such a cool film. What are your hobbies outside of bodybuilding?
Ah, um, because I work full time as an online coach and I do my own bodybuilding. Bodybuilding really takes up the majority of my time in one way or another. But outside of that, I like to read a lot of books, and I enjoy reading like on geopolitics and war history and technology related to like you know, military industrial stuff and all that, and history of the Soviet Union, because that's our eternal enemy right outside our eastern border, and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. So I read a lot of books, and that was actually another funny thing because I started reading books when I was really young, and I enjoyed it a lot, but then I kind of stopped reading anything other than textbooks for school, because I
Mm,
figured if I have time to read, I should read like school books.
mm.
And that I don't think is a good way to go about it, because I had like 20 years in between there, when I was going to school and getting my degrees and everything, that I didn't read a lot of books. And now
Mm.
in my old age, I really love reading just, regular old books. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm the same. School has a way of, I think it can either make you fall in love with reading or just put you off it. And I was in the latter, but
Mm.
now I read a lot more now. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I guess the one thing is that you just have to find topics that you're really interested in.
that's the thing. Yeah, yeah,
And you can find literally books on any topic in the world now.
yeah.
So it's like, that's going to be easy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, it's a great thing to do. And yeah, I've changed the quick fire questions. So the last one is, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, this one would be a really long one because
This is not quick fire.
yeah, but it's like everybody always says that they wouldn't change anything because then they wouldn't be the person they would be today. And that's kind of true. It's hard to imagine where you would be if you had even made like one different decision in your youth because of, the ripple effect. But yeah, I've made so many mistakes, so many dumb things that if I could just fix them all, everything would have been so much better. But that's not how life goes.
Mm,
So yeah, so I can't really change what I did back in the day, and I've made a lot of mistakes, and I will continue to make a lot of mistakes. That's how it is. But in my like, because I've produced a lot of content like articles, podcast videos for the last 20 years, all in Finnish. And I think what I nowadays kind of try to convey is that be less dogmatic, be less like don't do things just because this is how things have always been done. For example, like I probably wouldn't have bad knee problems or knee injuries if I had like had the courage to just think for myself that, I tried to build quads for 7 years at the start of my training career just by doing barbell back squats. Because at the time it was like, well, if you want big legs, you need to do barbell back squats. But if you look at my anthropometry, it's like I am not built to do free barbell back squats because I
mm,
have really long femurs, a relatively shorter torso, plus my ankle mobility is that of a piece of steel.
mm.
So it's I tried to, bang my head against the wall with the free barbell squats that everybody was saying that, well, that's the one thing you got to do if you want to build quads. And all I got from it was like bad knees and, well, it built my glutes and my lower back, but, not my quads. So that's just an example of not thinking for yourself, just, believing in a dogma, believing in something that has always been done, so you must continue to do it. No, like you can think for yourself and just try to be more objective and logical about it. And if the like it's a great actually if the dogma and the tradition, it helps with a starting point.
Mm.
It's like if you have no idea what works for you, like you have no experience, yeah, go do, start out with what everybody else is doing, like
Yeah.
do the back squats. But like, don't wait for 7 years
Mm.
when it's not working for 7 years. To finally decide that okay, I'm probably better off doing leg presses and hack squats,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so yeah, that's probably the one thing that it would be like a simple rule is like, yeah, maybe start out doing the general stuff,
Yeah.
and tradition and traditional advice can help with that. But yeah, don't be afraid to make your own calls based on
Mm.
your own body and your own situation, and because you're an individual among other individuals, and individuals aren't the median slope of the Gauss distribution and studies. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Really good message there. I really agree with that. Yeah. And I've made that mistake as well. It's
I
very
think
easy to do.
I think everybody does, and it doesn't matter how much as old guys,
Mm.
try to say that don't do that. All the younger generations will always make the same mistakes. I
Yeah.
think that's how it's gonna be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, great message. And yeah, this has been amazing. Thank you again for joining me. This has been a ton of fun. We'll definitely get you back to do another one of these. Um, but yeah, thank you guys for watching and for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Cheers.